Justin Sisemore, Mary Maloney, and Andrea Jones back at you within your best interest. Today is going to be the men's survival guide to divorce. And don't worry, ladies, we're going to talk about our crazy brains and how it all fits together. So this is not meant to be just geared towards men. It's kind of talking through what we see on a daily basis and some of the things, honestly, that we see that you can start to look out for as well.
Absolutely. Well, I think what brought this topic to mind is that men go through divorce, but a lot of people think that it's a lot easier for them than it is for women, and that is not necessarily the case. So Justin, you've dealt with like every personality type under the book. What unique challenges do you see that men have during the divorce process?
I get the question probably, I would say, 5 times a day. Do you represent more men or women? The answer is it's about the same, number one. And then number 2, I get the question, do courts, do they favor the woman? Do they favor them in custody situations, in property division? And then really the third piece that I get is how do I get my husband to change behavior? Those are my big 3. It goes both ways with husband and wife. I've said before, I can't stand when we say I represent men only, or it's the men or women's divorce. I don't like that, but it is important to, just like we bucket things from the previous podcast and what we're doing for spring cleaning, it's important to bucket some personality types. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that it's easy for men. Women, if you have a really good wife, women are our backdrop. They are our entire life. They run our entire being. So the idea that it's easy is just hogwash, number 1. Number 2, the concept that a man just gets over it because he doesn't know or he doesn't express the emotion or show it, and he's not supposed to because maybe y'all helped in gearing us that way, or maybe society did,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? It's just fake news, and so I've shared tears with billionaires, with people that have millions and millions of dollars, and people that have not a dime to their name. People that have been really bad dads, people that have been really good dads, people that have been terrible in divorce and terrible to their wife and cheated on their wife and done horrible things, that have made massive, massive changes in their core being. And I've represented people that are really, really, really good people that just turn into sour grapes, okay? And I don't love that you can put that in the man-woman category, but this whole concept, that it's easy for the man, it is not. You guys y'all are our rocks. So if we lose our rock, we're a rudderless ship. Our buddies don't even like hanging out with us, right? So no, it is not easier. And then I'll get into the court stuff and all that when you get there. But it's a very real thing that's been happening a lot. And I think the financial independence of women, which is awesome, but the concept that I'm financially independent and now men are supposed to just accept things and it's not hard for them. It's always been hard for us. We just show it. We show it a little bit more now.
Mm-hmm. So I kind of shared this example earlier. I know when my husband was married to somebody before myself, right when he was out of high school practically, and it was a short marriage because she cheated on him. And it was back in the 80s. It was a long time ago when he got divorced, but it was a very difficult time. It was a different time then too, but he came from a Catholic family. He had friendships, basically couples friendships. And it's still painful to him to this day because everybody turned their back on him. From the men friends who didn't want to piss off their wives, to the fact that he came from a Catholic family. He was the first divorce in the family, and there wasn't any family support really either. It's like, we grew up in the buck up, buttercup generation, So it's still it's still painful for him, and it's hard for me to listen to him that the fact that he had to go through that. So my I guess my point here is that it's really important that you have a solid support system, whether you're a woman or you're a man, and sometimes it's more difficult for men to ask for help in that situation. So how do you, what would you recommend to men in regard to finding a support system in those situations? Hopefully it's better today than it was back in the 80s, but...
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think that independence is the most important thing. I think what happens is we as a society try to find answers, and we oftentimes start relying on third parties and friend groups and family groups. And, I think the reality is if you're really dissecting an individual that's really hurting, especially men, they have a tendency to all their independence kind of goes away, right? They got it either taken from them or they became kind of this victim mentality. And I can tell you, like, if you hear like, well, women are dramatic, you want to see a drama escalate, look at a dude who has lost his way. They're the most dramatic people I represent. Mm-hmm. They're very challenging to get out of their own way. Everything's everybody else's fault. They become very victimized. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to do this. Like, I think it's important that we don't let it get there. And if it's there, there's a way to get out of that.
Right.
I've seen some really incredible men get broken completely by their jobs, by their spouse, by their kids. And what they do, the next step that they take forward is the most critical one. And oftentimes they'll just go, oh, here it goes again, and I'm just supposed to bury it, and I'm just supposed to bury it, and I can't breathe, and I can't talk about it, and I don't have a support group because I just kind of alienated all those people, but it's their fault because they're family friends. Well, no, be independent. Have your own damn friend group, okay? Mm-hmm. I'm not knocking, please don't take this the wrong way. I'm not saying that it was easy for your husband. He probably let his ex-wife drive that entire friend group. Mm-hmm. She probably walked, if we're being clear, she probably walked all over him and pulled him in a direction he didn't want to go, and he didn't stand up to her to say no. Mm-hmm. And so if you're that person that has been kind of that whipping boy, if you will, and you don't have to flex. I'm not suggesting flex. In fact, don't do that. But if you've been that whipping boy, you've got to start to assert yourself a little bit in positions. What does that mean? Well, if you don't have any free time to go with your buddies, and I know this is Andrea's about to come the other direction with the female side. If you don't have any free time with your buddies, and your wife is just like, you can't do this and you can't do that and all that, you're going to keep getting stepped on and stepped on and stepped on. And there's personality types, like type A will lash back. Then I'm not doing that, right? But type B will just pull back, bury, and then they lash out. Or they start doing random crazy stuff. They go into adultery, they go into drugs, alcohol abuse. And it's like the cat that gets backed in the corner that starts scratching. So the biggest thing, I think, is making sure that you do an independence assessment first. Do you have independent friends? Do you have independent family? Can you talk about these things? And if you can't, you need to baby step in how you lay that out. Don't just go in, I don't have any friends and I don't have any family. You need to baby step in that. Hey, listen, I think it's important that, I go do this today. I need to go do this activity today for me, just like it is for women. We talk about women a lot. I think
in any relationship, it is, you need to stay the person you are. You cannot just be part of something else. You have to be your own person, and only then can even add to a marriage or relationship. If you lose yourself in becoming the wife or the husband, that's a problem anyway. I mean, for male or female, but I think for men, it's harder because you guys don't share as much with your friends. We talked about, like, when we women go spend 2 hours together, we know what we cooked for dinner yesterday and how our kids are and family are. We know everything. You guys play golf for 2 hours, and then you come home and we ask you, how is he? How is his wife? I don't know. What did he talk about? Well, we just hung out. You don't share as much, and I think there's a pride in there not to share about problems. So how do you get a man that is very private, even if he has the friends and has his friend group? How do you get a man in those situations to share? What can a man do to be more open? Because I think a lot of stuff that we women solve in those divorce situations, whatever, we talk to each other. We seek out friends, and even, I mean, hopefully you have friends to yourself. You find people to talk about. But guys don't really share deep emotion. Many of them are, like you say, what is that? Buck up, buttercup, whatever.
Buck up, buttercup.
So you just suck it up, and you don't. How does a man can a man learn to be more open to share those emotions? Do you need a counselor? Is that more a safe place? Can you talk to your friends, or do you lose your face in front of your friends? I've heard that many times. I can't lose my face and share deep emotions in front of my friends. They have a certain image of me, and if I now share how I really feel, then they lose respect for me. I mean, how do you get a man to do that?
I love this topic, and I don't pretend to be the expert, but I do hear from thousands of people this very issue. I will tell you right now, you were in the meeting yesterday. We talked about retainers, and people sometimes want to know about retainers. I can't tell you how many times in modifications I get a call from a guy. He's got a new wife or significant other. And I start in 2 questions. I start talking to him, and somebody that I don't even know jumps in to tell me about their damn case. Mm-hmm. It's the new girlfriend, the new wife, or whatever. She's going to tell me everything about that guy's life and what I need to know. Okay? That dude allows it. And he goes, well, my wife knows. He's already devalued himself. He's already made my antennas go up, because I know I'm not just dealing with him. I'm dealing with this other third-party personality who clearly does not like the other woman, right? And so what I'm getting at about that independence and that sharing, back to what you just said, Andrea, is it goes both ways. Dudes, you've got to be kind, and you've got to be reciprocating, and you've got to set agendas and dates and things like that. We talked about in the last podcast. But women, don't step on him. Don't step on him when he's trying. Even if he sucks at trying, don't step on him. Give him a little wiggle room there. And what I see a lot is, a type A or a type B person, a guy goes and gets with this super type A take charge type woman, and he goes, she's got it, bruh, she's got it, right? And that goes back to that independence situation. If you do that, well, he's not going to go share, because when he starts sharing, he gets stepped on if he's that personality.
No, I mean with your friend, and I don't mean with her. I mean more with each other. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, even a type A personality man, type B, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
How do you share? How can a man that is in a bad situation, goes through divorce? That's our topic. Men having a supposedly easier time, and we know it's not true in divorce. If you need the connection and the conversation with other people, what tips do you have for men to actually get that out of you and not push it down and not swallow it all up and be what society expects, the strong one that can handle it, and because you have your own job, and you said you saw people broken no matter where they come from because of a divorce, for example. How do you get them to find that safe place, the community, to actually share and get off their chest what really bothers them?
And I think too, we can talk about counselors, but I think the spirituality part of it that we talked about in the previous podcast too is important to bring into that picture.
For sure. Like the humility factor, that happens, and that spiritual transition, that occurs is a massive piece. Like, I can't, if I didn't have the spiritual component, it would be all I.
Correct.
Justin, Evan, listen to everything I have to say, and whatever you have to say doesn't matter. Because why else? What difference does it make? So the humility factor has to be there. But going back to your question, Andrea, and I think it's a good dialogue between you and I, is that if I'm stepping on you, or I feel stepped on, either way, if we don't start to make some things like the non-negotiables, like, hey, listen, every time I try to talk to our child about phone use, you go in and undermine my authority. Well, you've got to start breaking that down. You can't just say every time you undermine my authority. You need to start writing those moments down. That's why I tell clients to do these long little lists of kind of their day in their life, of their timeline, because these little things will build up. It's not going to be all the time just one big ticket item. And so guys are really bad about, like, okay, well, that's not that big a deal, and it's tomorrow, so I don't need to worry about yesterday. And the reality is you're starting to get knocked down. And so, or you're the person that's really abrasive and you overtalk her and she doesn't share any communications with you and you're never really communicating. You're just talking at. And so it goes both directions. And dudes, I mean, I'm that way sometimes too to my wife. I'm like, I got to get this out. So it cuts both ways. So what I would say is do an assessment. Ask open-ended questions to your wife or your significant other. Hey, we got in an argument last night. What did I do that really upset you? Like what? I know it was off, and I didn't mean who, what, when, where, why, and then shut the hell up. Okay, the overtalkers don't shut up. The undertalkers
never talk.
Never talk. So ask the freaking questions. If you ask who, what, when, where, why in almost any situation, business, in personal or whatever, but specifically with the significant other, and you sit there and listen, I don't care how nerdy this is. If you're really bad at communication, bust out your phone notes and start to write it down. It makes her know you're listening to her. And then you literally read it. And if you read back and it's like the next day, the day after, you're like, that's actually not that dumb, all of a sudden we're making progress. If every single time she says something, you're like, that's dumb, you need to go get a counselor and you need to really do some internal reflection about whether you have narcissistic tendencies or all the other crap I hear 50 times a day.
So, getting back to though, if somebody's actually going through divorce, and they're having a difficult time, and this could be male or female, but we're talking about men today and how to survive divorce. How do they, like Andrea, you were saying there's some guys that they just want to put up that front. They don't want to let it come down in front of their friends, but they need to get that support, emotional support, and be able to get it out. They can't talk to their wife anymore. That's done. So what are some good resources for men to get the support that they need?
Obviously for me, my life-changing thing has been Bible study fellowship. I'm always going to start there. I don't mean to get preachy, but I'm always going to start there. The spiritual side of that has changed my entire outlook. It makes me know I'm just a cog in the wheel. I'm here for a minute and I'm going to be gone. And nothing I say is that important. Nothing I do is that important. So that for me has been a massive piece. So I think if you don't have any of that, whether it be, regardless of religion, regardless of whatever your situation may be, if you don't have any spiritual component or ability to break and recognize that there's something bigger out there, you need to start there. Mm-hmm. The second thing
there are divorce groups, I know, in churches too. So if you have never been or not in church, there are divorce groups in churches where you can actually go and be with other people that go through divorce and with other men. And start there, because if you've said, I've never done that before, I'm not a spiritual person, that might be a good way to go to. I mean, because that's people that are Christian-based help for divorce that help you through the situation. Yeah,
and I mean, I think what Andrea's talking about too is like that's a sense of community. Mm-hmm. And what happens to a lot of guys that I see is, I'm like, hey, name your 3 best friends. Name your 3 buddies. I don't have any. Or I don't have one. Name somebody that you've been friends with for 4 or 5 years. Mm-hmm. That's a telltale sign. Like if your significant other or husband or wife or whatever doesn't have a friend for 3 or 4 years or 4 or 5 years, there's a reason for that. I'm not saying they have to go out all the time and all that, but if they don't have somebody they can pick up the phone and call that they've got that relationship with, go get it. Go figure it out. And I don't care what it is you like to do. I love to play golf. Most people hate golf. They think it's boring. That's my thing. I get to go a couple times a year with my buddies, and we go on the golf trip. I play a lot of golf with my buddies. For me, that's great. That's my physical outlet in addition to working out and other stuff. But I'm very active. If you're not very active, it doesn't mean you're a failure. It's just you need a hobby group, and a hobby group creates a group of buddies. We see a lot with like AA and all this stuff. Like they become like super, super close in those groups. Because they share a commonality or common bond. So I think that identification, Mary, of like what it is you like to do, and if it's nothing, then go start trying stuff until you figure something out. You got to have some outlets. You just have to.
For sure. And then you can always obviously see a counselor, and that way it's just one-on-one. If you don't, that might be a good first step for some people too. It's just you.
There's guaranteed privacy, so that's not somebody going to talk about what you just shared.
Yeah, and that's important because you need to be heard, and they can help you sort out your feelings too. So when you have a client that's struggling with divorce, what kind of advice do you give them? That's kind of a big question, isn't it?
Whew.
Well, I mean, especially, I guess I'm thinking that if they're a man and they're struggling, um, kind of what are your marching orders? Maybe I don't know.
I would say that my transition in the last 5 years of my 15-year, 16-year career, whatever it is, has been pretty stark. In that, I used to be like, God, I can't even use the word on the live air, but that's how I would look at a dude or a guy whenever they would say, I'm struggling with this and I don't have any friends and I don't know who I would talk to. I would just kind of go into that, man, you need to get out of your own way mode, right? I can't stand people that go in this victim mentality mode. It drives me, it still to this day drives me nuts. I've figured out a better way to deal with it. And I've recognized that sometimes people over time have just been kicked and kicked and kicked and kicked and kicked. And that's men too, right? We've been just kicked. And, maybe we weren't the coolest kid in school. If you're like me and you had bird legs, you didn't get to play, football and all that stuff and do all this stuff. I just kind of went and said, I'm going to go find another way. I do understand that, older dogs, it's harder to teach those newer tricks and they feel like they can't. And I don't work well with those kind of people. So if you're that person that just says, I can't under any circumstance, don't deal with us. Cause I can't have that energy. Mm-hmm. By the same token, if you're just barely a scotch above that and you want to try, those are my favorites. I can't stand them for the first 5 months and they probably can't stand me. But then we start to really vibe because that's when they start to take flight. So the best advice I give them is at that point, all right, let's look at the day. Let's look at the week. Let's look at the month. How have you gone about this? And, once they get out of that victim mode and they start to make moves, I mean, it's just like anything else. When you start stirring up the grease or whatever you call it, it starts to get easier. Everything is a system. Your car is a system. Your body's a system. Your mind is a system. Being a man is a system. And if you make that start to be mobile and agile, it gets better. And I just believe that. So I'm going to preach that till I'm dead.
Yeah, I mean, it really too. I think it goes back to that. It's really a process too, that you're getting through those emotional things and to know that it's going to get better, that it's not going to always be this horrible. You've shared some examples in the past that, people that are down on the dumps it's the make the bed story that I love that. It's just just make your bed, just start accomplishing these small things every day to just get out of the funk and move forward and do things for yourself and start loving yourself.
Oh, this guy married this guy last week. I talked to him on Friday, and he's a client of mine, client of the firm's. And I mean, everything is a very, very big deal. And if he's listening, I'm sorry, but everything is a big deal, right? Everything is super sad, and the system is out to get me, and this and that. And we went to a trial in this case, and the judge was like, she saw what I saw in this guy very early on, right? Mm-hmm. Now, he doesn't view what he received probably as a great result. I view where he started and where he finished as massive progress. Mm-hmm. And he still needs a whole lot of work, okay? Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is now he's like, well, the judge didn't give me all the time I need. I'm going to go attack the judicial system, and I'm going to go write a grievance against the judge, and I'm going to go do this. And my ex-wife is this, and she just didn't give me the time I need to explain myself. This is the guy that literally says that because our kids had some candy on Halloween and had some sugar in Halloween, that our child's growth is stunted on the stand. I mean, you can't get everybody all the way out of their way. We want to, right? Mm-hmm. But some progress I got to look at it that way, because else I just go nuts. So my point is that in that situation, there are people that are so far down and so far gone, but they can make steps and leaps back. But I'm telling you, I will bet my last dollar, that guy will be in a custody case inside of about a year and a half because he will go right back to the old habits, right back to the old victim mentality, right back to not communicating. And, it's not that hard. It's just not. So anyway.
So maybe we can wrap up the podcast today with some success stories or any success story in particular. I mean, I know we've talked about a bunch of your different success stories with clients, that somebody that started at rock bottom and that finally found his way. And since we're talking about men, I'm going to say his because there's a lot of hers out there too. But is there any particular success story?
2 in 2 years. So Lanny, I won't use his last name, never use a client's last name. Probably shouldn't even use it first, but here we are. Guy came into my office, probably one of my favorite success stories of not only a father, a broken husband, a broken businessman, a lion. You could see it. I mean, he's just like, you could see that he was that dude. Mm-hmm. Comes in just wasted, first couple consultations, like, hey, can't even see you today. Come back when you're sober. Comes back a couple days later, pays for another consult, by the way. Comes back a couple days later, still kind of got this stuff in his body, but he's like, man, I got to do something here. She served me, and no time with his kids. Wife thought he was just a lifelong lost cause, drunk, idiot, blah, blah, blah. She happened to be a very, very difficult individual. Mm-hmm. And in that case, we went from supervised and or limited to no access because he started out with a DWI and some other stuff and went all the way to primary custody. Okay. That did not happen because Sisemore got up on the soapbox and did all the things, although I did a good job in that case. Anyway. But it happened because I was patient enough with him to recognize that he was capable. I buried myself enough and humble enough to go, all right, give this guy a chance. And this was several years ago, so I'm still going through this journey of like, have more empathy, right? Not everybody can do it overnight. He goes back, and to this day, 2 years later, primary custody, ex-wife decided he's never going to be a good dad. He's never going to be a good businessman. Guy's a multimillionaire, primary custody of his kids doing awesome. And not only that, he knows how to talk to his wife, or his ex-wife. And so anytime she tries to fire up a modification, I'm like, let's roll. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's one guy. Another guy, very, very successful guy. Many, many cars, all the shiny things, built a business, did incredible, big oil and gas. So they, when the oil market's hot in Fort Worth, they get all the shiny things. When it goes south, then everybody's, runs for the hills. At least what I see. And that includes the wives all of a sudden, or let's say it's husband and wife interchangeably. Wives are used to a certain lifestyle. So market goes south, he goes into flight mode, which is just basically, I got to get away, I got to escape, drugs, alcohol start creeping in. So he went from Titan to baby cub. Mm-hmm. And comes into my office, had been on a 24-hour bender, or 48-hour bender in Vegas. You can still see the residue from the weekend. Comes in, very, 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 very nice woman that he's married to. Very good family. And I see this dude and I'm like, I don't even want to represent you. And so I tell him, I'm like, hey dude, I'm not going to represent you unless you do this, this, and this. He goes and does it, and I never hear a call. Crickets. To me, I know the woman and I know the guy. There's no way she would have stayed in that situation but for that change. Mm-hmm. And he did it. He got a kick in the backside by somebody that gave him just an extra kick. And I had a very deep talk with him about my personal life. And I try to do that a lot because obviously I got a lot of drama and skeletons in my closet too. Not just...
Let's dig those out.
Oh, yeah.
Next podcast.
Next podcast.
Too long. So it's cool. It's cool to be able to do that. And so that guy is now happily married. Kids are all intact. Phone calls, stop, crickets, non-suit, huge success. That's two awesome. Very different scenarios. Two very broken dudes, very different walks of life. Both did incredible rebounds. That's the juice. That's the juice I try to squeeze.
Yeah, why do you think they were successful?
Grit.
Mm-hmm.
Grit. Dudes that have grit, that are independent, those are the ones that make it. And you can develop grit. I mean, anybody that's in the military will tell you you can do that. Mm-hmm. And so this whole, I can't do it. That's why I just keep saying, I'm not going to deal. 25 is not the year of victims. Hell no. No damn victims. Mm-hmm. This is the year of grit. And let's start with one day at a time. Let's start with one little piece of grit and let's just move that grit forward. And remember, seasonality, we're going to have grit. We're going to lose grit. We're going to get it back. It's okay.
And so what are the things that you would advise a guy not to do when you go into the divorce? Because we talked about what to do. What would you say not to do? I mean, I've seen men transition a girlfriend, like got served, and a week later moving in with another woman and things like that. So I don't know whether you see that often. I hear it a lot from friends. Like,
that happens.
He already has a new one.
Don't do that.
Yeah, I mean, that's one example. But what are other things that you would advise a guy in the situation? Because we're talking about men not to do when you are already in a divorce process. We talk about before having friends and stuff, but now when you're in the process, you got served or you made the decision to get divorced and you file. What should you not be doing?
Yeah, a lot of men, contrary to popular belief, are pretty lonely creatures, right? We actually crave the nurturing of our mothers as men, and so we're pretty lonely creatures, and so we tend to just jump in, like you said, with some third party. That's absolutely the worst thing you can do. She's going to probably walk all over you because you don't even know who you are, and you're going to end up with the wrong person because you don't know who you are. So don't do that. The biggest thing too is it's just not that hard to treat your spouse, ex-spouse, mother of your children, who half of your child is made up of that individual, as you want to be treated. And remember, let's just say you're just that arrogant, you need to win and you need to show her who you are type. When you get into a courtroom and your exhibits are all of your personality out on text message, out on Facebook, and you live your life by vocalizing in writing and in exhibit form, that is clear and convincing evidence. That's how I dominate you in a courtroom. Mm-hmm. And so I just ask you open-ended questions like, hey, listen, you say you're co-parent, right? Yes, and you're a super good dad, and you just love you just love trying to work together and all that. And I've got 50 FU text messages sitting in my folder right under. I'm ready. I'm salivating. I'm ready to eat you. So the first thing is communicate less, say less if you can't communicate well. Ask open-ended questions. Don't direct, don't project, don't conclude for your wife or your ex-wife or the mother of your children. Don't speculate how she feels. Ask her the questions, process and dissect the answers. Don't respond. Sit back and chill, and then move forward. And some of those things, you probably go, that's actually makes sense. And if you're like, well, you don't understand. I hear this all the time. You don't understand my ex. She's crazy, and her new husband. I hear all this crap.
And
all
the ex
the time.
is always crazy, no matter what.
They always are.
Right?
Sometimes they're right. But if you will compartmentalize and realize that you have to deal with this person. If you have kids, you're gonna deal with them, and so we got to fix it. So the only way to fix it is, in my opinion, take the communication down, start to journal, start to dialogue, start to make forecasts, start to make calendars. Really keep track of what's happening inside of emotions in yourself, and what's the trigger points for your significant other or ex. And then I think what's going to happen is ultimately kids are smart. They're sponges. They know when there's animosity. If you can let the wind out of the sails and let that animosity die.
Keep your seat out of the. Some counselor told me once, keep your side of the street
Keep your
clean.
side, yeah.
And then so it doesn't matter what the ex-wife is doing or what she's saying. So just be the best dad you can be, I guess.
Yeah.
So don't get overly aggressive. I'm sure that you don't want him to post anything on social media.
Nope. And
Because that's evidence.
don't involve family and friends. And this is what we deal with narcissists too. They say, do not go and engage your friend group or your family group to get support for how you're feeling. Don't do that. because you're going to get a lot of opinions, especially from sisters and moms and aunts and cousins and all that. And it's impossible to retract. And I have a lot of people that actually stay married. I try to encourage people to stay married. So I have a lot of people that actually end up healing, and then their whole network and whole surroundings is broken because you just went on a terror talking about how bad the person is.
And then you want to go back with
Yeah, so go to a counselor to do that, or go to some third-party place. Don't put it in your immediate sphere of influence.
That's good advice, because I think a lot of people tend to just talk trash about the ex
Yeah,
to everybody,
it's
and
easy.
then
You're right there. Hey, listen.
anything else? Anything else?
Yeah, I mean, attorneys aren't. We're not going to fix every life situation. We're there to facilitate and help you, but you have to use the totality of your surroundings, and that's why we talk about health, wellness, spirituality, business. You have to use the totality of your circumstance. Your lawyer is there to facilitate things for a short window of time, and then they're gone. So don't think that your lawyer is the devil or God's gift to the earth. Don't think either one of those, because you're then taking away your independence.
And he's not your counselor, right? We talked about that before. That your lawyer is not your counselor. A very expensive counselor.
I'll shine your shoes for our rate per hour. I try to get you out of that. Don't do that. I mean, it doesn't make sense. So I think if you really break that down, and you should have a very good business relationship with your attorney and being able to do that. And when you're going through the divorce process, if you can't have these communications and there's not a clear understanding and a clear common ground, even if your attorney doesn't agree with you, which your attorney should not agree with you most of the time, you're getting a divorce for a lot of reasons. Some of them are your fault. And I'm just going to say that. Some of them are your fault. And if you're the person that can't accept that, tough cookies. We ain't going to be your firm anyway, so it's fine.
All right. Is that your final word on the topic for the day?
Final word.
All right.
Yeah.
So if you live in Texas and you still think you might want to talk to Justin Sizemore, you can reach the Sizemore Law Firm at 817-336-4444 or visit lawyerdfw.com. We also invite you to follow the podcast and share it with friends who might find it helpful. Thanks so much for listening in, and have a great day.